All right, Falcons fans, admittedly it hasn't been a great season for the Dirty Birds, but that doesn't mean you can't hate the Saints on Sunday. We'll talk today about how maybe Atlanta pulls the upset. It's all on the way next on AJC Falcons News Now.
This is AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Here are your hosts, Brandon Adams and former Atlanta Falcon Chuck Smith.
And on Sunday, Falcons Saints in New Orleans. Of course, Atlanta a big underdog, but even in the midst of what has been a bad season, still an opportunity to go out there and hate on those Saints. Something Falcons fans love doing. This is a real rivalry. There is feelings of that on both sides, and frankly, it's obviously diminished by the Falcons' record. I'm not going to pretend that it's not, but in terms of getting excited for this one, I think for a lot of Falcons fans, they're still able to do that, even though, let's face it, there's a very, very gigantic difference between the two teams right now.
But if there's a team the Falcons want to beat, now, you know, Brandon, everybody knows this is a rivalry. And this game is usually close. The Falcons and Saints, it's a battle. And the thing I like most about it is that the fans get involved. Because now, since Hurricane Katrina, now there's more of Saints fans than I've ever seen here than ever that are living here, right? Yeah. And, it's pretty well documented. But look, this rivalry has been built a lot of times also on one team might have success and the other hadn't. The Falcons still have a chance, number one, to have a respectable season. But here, the Saints have a chance to get home field advantage, in the NFC. So they're chasing San Francisco. You got Seattle right on their tail. So the Saints need this game bad. The Falcons could play spoilers, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
Yeah, and as someone like yourself who played in this rivalry for a long time, your memories of it, I know we'll get some of this a little bit later on the program, but I think you probably can appreciate this as much as anybody, that for most games in the NFL, at least from the outside looking in, watching on television or watching from the stands, which I always have, it certainly seems like the typical NFL game is just the typical NFL game, that the college rivalry thing that a lot of us love on Saturdays, you don't get a lot of that on NFL Sundays. But from having played in the game, I think you would say that Falcons Saints did have some of that, right?
It is a rivalry. It is a heated rivalry. This is the team the Falcons hate most to lose. Now, remember, when the Falcons lost the Super Bowl, to this day, the Saints you would have thought the Saints were the ones who beat the Falcons, and it was they came back from 28-3. So it is physical. It is violent. It is a nasty game because let me tell you why the national media doesn't give it as much credit. When you think about rivalries, Cowboys, Redskins, you think of some of these other teams that are, have huge rivalries. Chicago, Green Bay. It's because historically, Atlanta and New Orleans weren't big markets in the 70s. The teams weren't winning. So now, when they're not in big markets, they don't get on TV.
That's right.
And then they weren't good teams when it came from an organization standpoint. So down here, we lived it. We know what the rivalry's like. But now the national media, especially with the implementation of social media and all these different things.
Good point.
And the Falcons and Saints have become good. One of them has gotten a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The other, we got the two. So
that's right.
I think now people are seeing a rivalry, but I've been a part of it. Man, it is knock down, drag you out. I'm absolutely trying to hurt somebody from the Saints. That's back in my day.
All right. School. Understandable. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy amongst our comment section. It's probably a bigger word than I should be using. Pretty split decision, and you got Rod Smith on the one hand who says they're the most annoying people in the world. So obviously he's ready to go out and play against
Eagles
the Saints
fan
on Sunday.
You hadn't met an Eagles fan then.
Debbie and Nally McClellan says we do hate the Saints. Jacob O'Neill says, I know this ain't got nothing to do with this, but it's not looking good for Ohio State. We'll get into that situation a little bit later on. But then on the other side of this, you got Blake Robinson who says, #stinking for Lincoln, which I've talked about. Blake says, just save the rivalry for next year and go ahead and lose, LOL. Let me be honest for a second. I find myself, in the perspective of a Falcons fan here, a lot more aligned with Blake than I do some other people, because you can certainly notice the energy, I think, different among Falcons fans. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of, frankly, optimism back when it seemed that Atlanta was on the verge of making some real changes. When it looked like that Dan Quinn might get fired going into the bye, Falcons fans were fired up and ready to go. Our comment section on both Facebook and YouTube is the perfect example of this. But when Blank kind of stepped up and said, things right now good enough as they are, I do think that diminished the energy of a lot of Falcons fans. When Atlanta didn't really use the trading deadline as an opportunity to purge some of the dead weight that's on this roster. And there is dead weight, dead wood that needs to be chopped off this roster. When Atlanta didn't use the trading deadline as a chance to do that, I think the energy was diminished a little bit. So while I appreciate the history of Falcons Saints because I've lived in Atlanta my whole life, there is a part of me that does align more with the thought process on Blake Robinson. This isn't the real version of Falcon Saints, because you hope that this isn't the real version of the Falcons that you see in years going forward. That the energy that Falcons have right now is not so much in wanting to be angry with the New Orleans Saints. If anything, unfortunately, a little bit jealous of New Orleans right now, because New Orleans has got a roster and a coaching situation that Atlanta can't match right now. That for Atlanta, this is more about the reboot for 2020 than it is about the get the boot from New Orleans this Sunday.
We surviving.
That's right. Doing the best you can, right?
We're in survival mode. And, see, you made a good point about after the mid-season, after the break, right?
Yeah.
The Falcons, they didn't make many moves. So I think one of the things that the fans are feeling, like numb.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fans are really kind of shocked. Not at this point, but I think the way the Falcons came out, the Falcons fans were shocked that this team that we all were told and we all started believing, right? We were drinking the Kool-Aid. Julio, you know what I'm saying? Ridley.
Yeah.
Freeman's going to be back, right? Dan Quinn is the coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
All those different things that were, stirring the pot. Grady's, we're going to get him signed. There were so many things leading up to the Falcon season that made that we thought would be special.
Yeah.
And getting Neil back.
That's right.
So think of so many things. I understand the Falcon fans. I just think they're numb. And right now, it's like this, wait and see what's going to happen.
Right.
And like now after the break, it's like, okay, we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
They're playing against our rivals. We're hoping for the best, but we have no expectations. But we're going to be kind of watching, a little bit with the side eye.
We've got some YouTube comments I want to take here in a moment. Before that, it's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. That's Chuck Smith. My name's Brandon Adams. Great to have you with us. Of course, as I said before, the entire thing brought to you by Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great, and it's just 96 calories. Let me get a couple YouTube comments here. Wayne Bolden with an important correction. He says, hey, it's not the Saints, it's the Aints. And every Falcons fan certainly understands that. But Lenore Designs brings up this. Not trading Freeman will haunt us. I didn't get a chance to talk to you kind of in the immediate aftermath of the trade deadline. I'm curious about that. There was the report from the NFL Network that Atlanta had gotten down the road with the Detroit Lions about a Devontae Freeman trade, ultimately decided not to do that. What I said on the show, Chuck, when you weren't here is, I hope this isn't true. I hope Atlanta didn't have a chance to get something for Freeman, because if they had a chance to get something for him, that'd be a whole lot better than what's eventually going to happen when you have to cut him for nothing at the end of the year because you can't afford to keep him.
Right.
Devontae Freeman is simply a salary piece I don't believe you can afford to keep, nor do I think that he's really earned the money that you paid him from the extension that you gave him. So that situation, I didn't expect him to trade Vic Beasley, frankly, but I probably would have cut Beasley on the heels of not being able to trade him, just because I think you've got to send a message that there's a certain standard that has to be upheld in terms of the way that guys play, the way that guys perform. You obviously expressed your thoughts on Beasley before, but on the thing with the Devontae Freeman, if you've got a chance to make that trade, don't you have to make it? And I'm not sure I believe the NFL Network reporting on this, frankly, but if you had to make that trade and didn't, wouldn't that be a huge mistake?
Let me look at it from another angle.
Okay.
And I understand where a lot of people think it'd be a huge mistake, but let me look at it from an organizational standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Let me kind of go behind the doors a little bit. If I'm the Falcons, right, and I've drafted these guys, right, 2 years ago, I believe that this running back was one of the top 5 in the National Football League, so I rewarded him with that kind of contract. Yeah. And now I'm at the end of the rope, and I'm Dan Quinn. All right, so I got Freeman. To me, what it does, it speeds up even more the process that he can't do his job. It adds a whole nother piece to that he can't do his job because we believe in this cat. So I think if I'm going down with the ship, I'm going to try to get the guys that I believed in. They're coming down somewhat with me, like Vic Beasley. So all the way to the end, if I'm Dan Quinn, I'm trying to fix Vic. This is it. This is it for all of them. So to me, from behind the scenes, it says, you know what? We not only are we struggling with these guys in public for them not to do their job, but now in private, we're admitting that we failed. We completely failed. So to me, it's somewhat saving face, I would say.
I agree.
You understand what I'm saying?
I do agree.
So we're going down anyway. So why trade this guy and then you trade him and Lord have mercy, he goes somewhere and runs the ball.
So
I'm going down. He's going down with the ship.
Which would not be a great scene. But let me respond to that, because if we agree, and if we say that based on the Facebook comment section, the YouTube comment sections, the energy that was there and we thought accountability was on the way is a little bit absent right now, I think what some Falcons fans were hoping for is there would be an admission of, you know what, some of the guys we chose to bring back was just a mistake. Bringing back Vic, even on a kind of a show-me-one-year deal, that was a mistake. Signing Devontae Freeman to this money, that was a mistake. Maybe keeping him instead of Tevin Coleman, maybe that was a mistake. You can kind of debate all this stuff as much as you want to. But what it looks like, to go back to what you said saving face. I think a less generous way of describing that is an absence of accountability. That Atlanta, over the course of the bye week, coming off the embarrassing loss to the Rams and Seahawks, had a chance to show some accountability and just kind of chosen not to. The way it's been said by a lot of people on social media is, it almost seems like Falcons owner Arthur Blank is trying to do everything he can to keep from having to make apocalyptic type moves, keep from having to make these really bold proclamations of mistakes that have been made in the organization going back the last couple of years. That's the kind of thing that I just think, you said numb before. I think one of the reasons why we've gotten there, a lot of Falcons fans feeling numb right now, is because they were waiting on some sort of accountability for somebody, and flipping Raheem Morris from wide receivers coach to defensive backs coach isn't exactly what Falcons fans were hoping for.
Right.
And we'll get to Raheem in a moment.
Yeah, Raheem, but I just look at it like this again. I just feel like the Falcons in this situation, they're backed up against the wall.
Yeah.
So if right now, if I fire Dan Quinn, it sets it on fire. We're the Redskins. We're literally every second. We're 50% of the talk because we're the most disappointing team now. We become 95% of the talk. You get rid of Freeman, it adds a whole nother dynamics to the players. Now you're really showing fractures in the organization, because every week now, what do the guys got to answer about? Not only got to answer about Dan Quinn's job, then they got to worry about Freeman. Okay, who's stepping up for Vic? Why didn't Vic do good? So to me, Arthur Blank's doing a good job.
Okay.
I'm not destroying all this now. The inevitable is going to happen anyway. But me getting rid of Freeman and all this other stuff, to me, takes away from a little bit from what Arthur said. Let me give Dan Quinn a true evaluation with the pieces he has, and let me make the decision if he cans them or not, and when I do it.
So I want to get to the Falcons on the field here in a moment. Let me make one more statement about this, because I really have felt like over the last few weeks, I found reason to kind of defend Blank against some of the criticism from fans and really kind of support what I think Arthur Blank has been, which is a little bit of a singular owner in comparison to the old Atlanta Spirit Group that used to own the Hawks and the current Liberty Media Group that owns the Braves. I've always felt like the Arthur Blank stands as a nice positive contrast to them, because you see his face, you see his feet on the field at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. There's accountability in the owner's box. He's seemingly accessible to fans in that regard. From that standpoint, I like Blank. But I think for a lot of Falcons fans, the inaction around the bye week, I do think makes them a little nervous of, does he really see what's going on? And listen, he didn't get rich as he is by being knee-jerk reaction about everything. Obviously, a measured approach seems to have served him well in his business life, and I guess he's bringing that into his football life here as well. But it definitely makes a lot of Falcons fans nervous when the kinds of words that he uses and has used over the last couple of weeks have a tendency to make him feel disconnected from what the fans are experiencing on the ground at the epicenter of all of this.
You're saying he's kind of handling it kind of slowly like a granddad.
Certainly not approaching this with the aggressive nature that I think some fans would have liked for him to.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying when you say that. Because ultimately, Arthur Blank is an owner that's learned a lot of football when it comes from being an executive from guys that have schooled him.
Yeah.
And Arthur Blank, to me, Arthur's somewhat, everybody he gets somewhat of a pass. He's a nice guy. He also lowered the hot dog prices. Man, Arthur Blank is a shrewd businessman that has made decisions that have done really well for the Falcons, and some of them haven't worked out well.
Yeah.
But his niceness, to me, has nothing to do with his decisions here to make a decision on Dan Quinn. I just believe that Arthur is a little more tougher, edgier, stronger as a leader than people give him credit for. Because it drives me crazy hearing, man, Arthur's just such a nice guy.
Yeah.
He lowered ticket prices, but also the PSLs. So Arthur Blank is getting his money. Arthur Blank is running the team like he wants to, and I think Arthur knows exactly what he needs to do. Arthur ain't no grandpa. Arthur's a shrewd, successful businessman, and I think behind the scenes, Arthur's like this. Arthur got that dog in him. Arthur is sitting back there saying, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to get this thing right because I want to win a championship.
I think we may have had a little bit of a Facebook issue there for a minute. It looks like things are back now. Hopefully it's back for y'all there as well. Let me know in the comment section on Facebook if you had an issue on that. It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Brandon Adams along with the former Falcon Chuck Smith. By the way, if you want all the in-depth coverage of the Falcons, best way to get that is by becoming an AJC subscriber. You can go to the website on your screen, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons. Falcons News Now. When you do, as a special thank you, you get this Falcons branded cooler. You know, the AJC is a proud partner of the Falcons, and the AJC has been providing in-depth coverage of the team for decades, and you can get the most and the best when you become a subscriber. Lots of different choices. The daily e-paper sent right to your device, Sunday delivery, 7-day home delivery, and whichever option you choose, you get the Falcons branded cooler as a way of saying thank you. But the website you got to go to is subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. By the way, speaking of the AJC, everybody do Orlando Ledbetter. Before we hear from Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan, let me give you a couple updates from D-Led on the injury situation. So it looks like Dan Quinn has confirmed that Matt Ryan is ready to play on Sunday. Desmond Trufant, going to be a game time decision for Atlanta there in that spot. Falcons have ruled out Ito Smith, Wes Schweitzer, and John Kaminsky for the game on Sunday. So injury reports kind of coming in from D-Led on Twitter. You can get more of that at ajc.com. And as far as Ryan making his return on Sunday, obviously that goes back to his absence from the Seattle game right before the Falcons went into the bye week. Ryan did talk this week about the frustration of having to miss a game after a long streak of being active and playing for the team, and kind of what he tried to do to stay sharp when he wasn't healthy enough to play. Here is Falcons quarterback Matt Ryan.
It's obviously not fun when you're not able to go, but I've been fortunate and I've been lucky throughout my career to be able to, be durable and stay on the field and work hard at that. But, sometimes you can't go, and, that's part of this business too. And you just have to deal with it and focus on whatever the challenge is, that you're going through at that point of just working on trying to get better. And that's more of where my mind goes in those type of situations.
So let me make a point larger than 2019 just for a moment, what is kind of a lost season for Atlanta right now. The durability that Ryan has shown up to this point in time, obviously missed the last game, is going to play on Sunday. I think it's a real valuable asset for Atlanta. And when you start thinking about the 2020 season, one of the reasons why I believe that Ryan is still one of the really important building blocks the organization is going to be structured around, one of the reasons why is his durability. Let me make a little bit of an odd comparison here for a moment. I don't blame Tua Tagovailoa for being hurt this year or last year. Years in a row, it disrupts the entire apple cart, right? With Matt Ryan, you can assume, even with kind of a shaky, banged up offensive line, I think you can assume going forward that Ryan's going to maintain the same level of durability that he's kind of shown up until now. And that's something that you can kind of, with some confidence, build around. That you give him some guys to throw it to, and he's got that. You give him an offensive-minded coach, and I think that he's going to be even better. But I think we have a tendency to take for granted the durability that Ryan has shown. Now, I told you last week, I didn't want the last game the Falcons played 2 weeks ago. I didn't want him to play. I don't think Atlanta benefits a ton right now from winning. So if he's hurt, he should rest. 2020 for him is more important than 2019. But the fact that, after one game missed, he's ready to bounce back, and prior to that had a long streak of consecutive starts. That's one of the things that as Ryan continues these final prime years of his career, that's one of the things I think he really has going for him. We have a tendency to take for granted a quarterback's durability when he shows it. When he's not there, that changes the entire tenor for the organization.
Yeah, you don't appreciate him till he's gone. Let me tell you a quick story, right?
Yeah.
So, we were here, I guess Jeff George was here. Jeff was our quarterback.
Yep.
And, he was having, he'd have great games, throw for 300-400 yards, and he'd have bad ones. And eventually him and June Jones, they fell out. They had issues, the whole nine. Had to do with just really personal things behind closed doors, right?
Yeah, and the word on the street is they really fell out.
Yeah, Jeff called him a B.I.B.A.
Word on the street.
Hey, when you turn in here, man, I'm going to tell you the Falcon fans are real. So look, so we wanted, when Jeff left, we were like, yeah, Jeff's gone, everything's going to be good. As soon as Jeff left, then the fans started seeing, wow, there was no offense. Wow, the next guy that came in, I forgot who was it Bobby Hebert? I don't think it was Bobby. Nonetheless, I don't know, Billy Joe Tolliver.
I think Bobby was prior to George, right?
Billy Joe Tolliver's like, man, we need Jeff back. So to me, having the guy back there, we just want to win. Right. And the quarterback's going to give you a shot to win. Any of the teams I played on, which wasn't a lot of them, that were really good with the Falcons, our quarterback was really good. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So to me, Matt Ryan, that's not the situation. Yeah. I've been debating with a few cats that, watches here anyway. Matt Ryan being on the field is one thing that I expect. No surprise to see him when he wasn't in the game.
Right.
But when you go through the birth process, what I call it, when you have to get another quarterback, when you birth and have to draft, right, and you start creating that new baby, you got to cultivate it, all the things, that's what a quarterback is, you will appreciate one day having Matt Ryan, no matter if he's elite or not. Matt Ryan's ability to be on the field and make plays. He's in the top half of the quarterbacks in the National Football League, been there for a long time. I'd rather have him than Minshew or any of those guys any day of the week. So you understand what I'm saying? So I'm not worried about that, but his ability to be on the field is really good.
I think that's well said. Let me let you hear from a couple other guys here really quickly. Julio Jones said something this weekend. I want to be very careful how I say this because Julio Jones is obviously a very respected member of not just the Falcons, but the NFL fraternity. He does his job at a professional level all the time. There is an aspect, though, a little bit of a talking point coming out of Flowery Branch this week that I think some fans are going to find to be a bit problematic and maybe a little bit frustrating. Here's Julio Jones on the idea of, has the Falcons season to this point in time been a disappointment after a pretty ugly first half? Here's Julio on that topic.
But for me, it's not a disappointing season for me because, like, we 1-7 or whatever it is. It's like we're not where we want to be at, but the season's not over, so I can't speak on if the season is disappointing or however it is, right? But for me, it's just the next game, just that mentality to always stay ready. So it's a process. We come out here each and every day, and you can't get bored with it, regardless of the outcome of the game. If you go out there and you play your best and do your best, like that's all we ask of each guy out here each and every day, to have that mentality, have that attitude about everything. So
what you hear from Julio there, and you're going to hear Dan Quinn essentially say the same thing in just a moment, is, hey, let's wait and find out if the season's a disappointment. I'm not ready to say it right now. Now I realize that you got to go out and do your job, whether it's a disappointing season or not, and I think ultimately that's kind of what Julio means there. But this idea that Atlanta is going to do something in the second half of the season to salvage what was a 1-7 start of the first half, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. If anything, just given the race for draft positioning and given how many bad teams there are in the league right now that could potentially kind of push Atlanta in kind of the nether regions of the middle part of the first round, which you don't want to be. If anything, Atlanta wins in the second half of the year, it'd be even worse than the first half's collection of losses. So this is, I think, one of the things that Falcons fans are a bit frustrated by, is that for all these guys, coaches, and in some cases players who've been given kind of a call from the governor, and they get a chance to be a part of this team for the second half of the year. At least that's the look that you get right now, the sense that you get in some cases. This idea, well, we're going to save it in the second half. We're going to go out and salvage our reputation and play for pride in the second half. You better not. You better keep doing more in the second half what you've done in the first half of the season, because nobody's going to be popping champagne corks about 8-8. That's not going to be good enough for anybody. 7-9, something along those lines. That's not going to be good enough for anybody. I think for a lot of folks that's just kind of frustrating because people don't want to hear that, hey, there's still a lot of football left to play. Now Atlanta, in its defense, does have all of its division games left to play, but it's also a 2-touchdown underdog on the road at New Orleans on Sunday. So let's be real.
Yeah, but he's a player. Mm-hmm. I mean, the mindset of NFL players is still, especially Julio Jones, he's trying to win. His mindset is that they have a chance to come back. Even Dan Quinn, I mean, these guys have been playing these are high-skilled, competitors. I mean, these are alpha competitors that think they can always turn things around. Now, the one statement I'll say that Julio absolutely I disagree with, even if they win 8 games, it's still a disappointment.
Yeah.
Because the defense hasn't done well in the first half, right? The offense hasn't been effective. The O-line hadn't been improved, right? The running game hadn't been there. So no matter what happens in the second half, the point here being, Julio, is that the expectation was for a Super Bowl. That's right. Anything less than that in making the playoffs is a failure. Yeah. So we might have, there might be a good, second half. Oh man, it was great, man. The Falcons, they showed pride. They gave us something to feel good for 7-8 games. Right. But the first half automatically dictates that it's not a good season.
Yeah, I think the point that I guess I'm kind of getting to here, and I agree with what you're saying, is that we are now in that sort of unfortunate spot where like the feelings of the fans and the feelings of the coaches and players, they are destined to not be on the same page for the rest of the season.
They never are. Never.
But when things are going well, they are. When things are going well, the things that the players are saying, the fans are like, yeah, I'm right there with you on this. However, when you reach a point like this where Atlanta, just the rules of professionalism dictate you can't sort of give up on the year, right? You got to go out and play hard. You got to go out and coach hard. Julio Jones has played every game of his career hard. He's going to keep doing that. But for the Falcons fan, this is more of a thing of you better not win. I need you to be 1-15. That's a real thing. There's not a single person watching right now that wouldn't take 1-15 if I could give it. Now you may say, well, I want to beat the Saints because that's a rival. there may be a few people along those lines, but the overwhelming majority of the people who watch us right now say, give me 1-15 because that's the recipe for how you get better. I've said this a million times. You hire an offensive-minded coach, you draft a game-wrecking pass rusher, you win 11 games next year, but it takes getting one of those really high draft picks to be able to do that. So that's the way the fans feel. So it's kind of weird for them to be saying, I'm not buying what Julio's selling right now, but even though that's what Julio has to say, fans are not buying that line right now. That does not resonate with them. The people that go to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the people who watch this game on Sunday, or the Falcons fans that even travel to the Big Easy to go watch this game, they live in a different universe right now than Julio Jones and the players on this roster do.
Now, we talked about the Falcons now have what? They were built for a championship, right? We talked about that, okay? You've also talked about the transition of a coach could help, right? But then we also throw in that pot about the players that we got this great personnel.
Yeah.
So to me, it's one of those situations that which one is it going to be? Or if we get a new coach, is it going to help? So do we need to go 1-15?
Right.
So to me, it's a contradiction that, okay, we think if we get rid of Dan, our personnel is going to help us get there.
Yeah.
Oh, now you just said if we go 1-15. So to me, it's one of those things that it's not just that I think people want to go 1-15. I think there are people that have there are more than just two options.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Fair enough.
There's 1-15.
Yeah.
Right? There's the coach.
Yeah.
And there we got the personnel.
Yeah.
So to me, it's one of those three that you got to figure out. But because I don't necessarily think everybody's wanting to go 1-15.
Okay.
Some people are fine with going 8-8, getting a new coach, and that'll be the recipe for success.
Well, let's find out here. Marshall Holmes says he agrees with you. Anthony Lamar Jones says, nope. We're going 9-7. We're going to be a 6-seed wild card. So he hasn't given up on this season yet, which I like to see. Eric Munn, though, does agree with me. He says it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Chris Davis says if the offensive line is horrible, the offense cannot thrive, period, running or passing. I mean, what is your take on the Falcons' offensive line right now? I think that in a year in which you're thinking about some tough salary cap issues, I think bringing back Mack for 2020 is something you have to do. I think that Lindstrom may be fine once he returns, to full health. We don't know about that yet. I think McGarry is getting pretty good experience. I actually think there's an argument to be made. The Falcons' offensive line, maybe you have some questions at left guard, maybe, but overall, I actually don't think this Falcons' offensive line, as bad as it's played this year, I don't know that it's necessarily in terrible shape for next year. Maybe.
Okay. Well,
I'm just saying maybe.
No, I got you. No, I got you. I'm going to talk about, you talked about are they any good and all those things.
Yeah.
I got two simple ways of putting it. You run for toughness. And this is something you said, it's a passer league, got to throw for touchdowns. So what I believe is you got to run for toughness. That establishes who you are. The best teams in the NFL now, they can throw, but they run the ball to rough people up for toughness, and they pass for touchdowns to get downfield. So what's happening with the Falcons, they can't run, so this team, as far as an offense, they don't look tough. They come out as a finesse team. You never see the Falcons just hammer people for 3rd and 1. So the perception of NFL players around the league, we know they're going to have to throw the ball because they can't run consistently on us. So am I calling them saying they don't have toughness? No, I'm just saying the offense doesn't, from a viewer standpoint, from an NFL other player standpoint, it ain't tough. So basically everybody's saying this is a run and shoot offense. And so to me, they're not running the ball. So it doesn't look like it's not a tough physical offense like you saw last night with the Raiders.
That's right.
The Raiders run the ball with toughness.
Yeah, Jacobs, the kid out of Alabama, is impressive. Now I'll admit something, because I have told you a million times this is a passing league now. This year, though, there are a lot of teams making some very successful moves using the running game to do it. Baltimore's an example of that. Oakland last night's an example of that. Look at Minnesota. Look at Dallas. These are teams that are really – San Francisco is running the ball statistically as much as anybody in the league is right now.
Seattle's running the ball well.
Yeah.
Seattle.
This is one of those situations where the running game around the NFL has actually had a little bit of resurgence this year.
Yeah, because quarterbacks – listen, organizations tired of getting quarterbacks beat up.
Yeah.
It is what it is. I've said it a million times. You are watching the evolution of the greatest generation of pass rushers the league has ever seen. Let me tell you why. Because those basketball players that are 6'5" that can't play from your high school, they done did what? I can't get no scholarship at 6'5" because everybody in college basketball is 6'9". So let me go ahead and be a defensive end.
That's very
Let me be a hybrid defensive end outside backer. Think of all the Peppers guys that started that thing, years ago, to Tony Gonzalez. So now you better be able to run the ball because these prehistoric animals, dinosaurs, look at them. Look at last night. You know, you watch. I was talking about the Crosby kid. That's a rookie. He's 6'6".
That's very interesting.
Cleveland Farrell from the, Cleveland. These are rookies.
Yeah.
So what's happening is, if you can't run the ball, you are going to get, eventually, you're going to get Matt Ryan. You can get out. Guess what? The kid at New Orleans, Drew Brees, he's been out. Remember last year, last year, Green Bay's head coach got fired really because his quarterback got beat up and they fell out.
That's very interesting.
The quarterback's going to get beat up. So if you don't run the ball, if the Falcons don't run the ball, in Matt Ryan's older age, it's going to keep happening. But I'm a pass rush guy, but it is what it is. Offenses have to run the ball or they're going to get hunted down by these pass rushers.
A few more comments. Blake Robinson says, draft Jalen Hurts, hire Lincoln Riley as coach. I'm going to keep repeating this until it actually happens, LOL. Terrell Pridgeon Sr. says, wow, I mentioned 1 in 15 before. Terrell says 1 in 15. I can't even let that out of my mouth. But, man, I don't know. So, obviously, that conversation will continue. Curtis Kittrell on Facebook says, personally, I feel anyone who considers purposely tanking the season has never been an athlete or a coach.
Thank you.
Can any athlete or a coach or team do that? So here's my thing.
Thank you.
So here's my thing.
Who was that who said that?
Curtis Kittrell.
Thank you, Curtis.
But here's the thing, though. The way that you tank is not by the players playing less hard or the coaches coaching less hard. The way that you tank is by management, GM's front office putting players on the field who are less likely to win. That's the way that you tank. That's the reason. Yeah, that's the reason why you consider trading a Trufant. That's the reason why you consider trading a Devontae Freeman. That's the reason why you did trade Mohamed Sanu. You know that. Now listen, for Sanu, you got a second round pick. But the point is, the way in which you tank is not by going to a professional athlete like Julio Jones and say, "Hey, Julio, I need you to go half speed today." You obviously don't do that. The successful way of tanking, and this is true in every professional sport, is it's about the team you put on the field.
Man, you tripping.
I'm just saying. I'm just telling you to do it.
That is not, listen, man. The worst thing you could do ever is do that because players know what, if it smells like ish, it is ish. The players going to smell that, man. They're going, man, you talking about creating an absolute locker room nightmare. The Falcons will know, the players would know that, you know, this guy shouldn't be here, man. This dude's a scrub. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying.
Sure.
But to me, that's not the way to do it. But maybe Miami's doing it. I don't know. But if I'm the Falcons, I don't see that.
Kimberly Mapp Jackson says, this season's been surprising. She means around the league. Some teams doing well that weren't expected to, others that were not. And, yeah, you do have something. Other than, obviously, the top end with, like, Kansas City and New England, they're pretty much as advertised. You know, I think that New Orleans, for the most part, kind of where they were predicted before the season. Other than that, though, you've had some interesting movement with some of these teams. And, unfortunately for Atlanta, maybe a surprise with a negative here thus far.
You're right. You see the Seattles.
Yeah.
But Atlanta, I mean, this is a catastrophic fall from grace. You know what I mean? I mean, there's many of us. I picked the Falcons to get to the Super Bowl. Heck, I seen guys, on TV, everybody's, goo gaga about the Falcons. Then I'll come, here comes San Fran. But let me just, something that I like to always say.
Please.
Every year, folks get to, and this part of the fun of the NFL, say, man, look at that strength of schedule. Oh, they're no good. People penciled in San Francisco this year probably as a win, right?
Yeah.
Now you look at Frisco.
You're right.
It's hard to really pick and see because every year it's going to be different outside of New England.
Yeah.
I mean, New England right now with Tom Brady, they speak for themselves. And also to my fantasy fans. Some of y'all who drafted Saquon first.
That's right.
So the fantasy thing's the same way. You just never know, but that's part of the NFL. But that's what makes the NFL great, parity.
The realist Terrence R. says, what do y'all think about Raheem Morris now coaching on defense? We're going to get to that topic actually coming up in just a moment. Before that, here's a little bit more from Falcons coach Dan Quinn, also on the idea of the second half of the season, kind of providing a little bit of a fresh start potentially for Atlanta. Here's what Quinn said about that earlier this week.
For us, our new season and 8-game schedule starts us with the format that we like from all the preparation and everything that goes into it. So told everybody if we have a chance to elevate in every space that we're going to do, we're going to try for it. Players, coaches, the whole thing. So it'll take a lot of energy, a lot of discipline to do that, but we've got plenty to work on. So this Sunday, looking how we want to play and focus on that as much as we can.
Obviously, Quinn trying to keep an optimistic mindset of a chance to reboot and restart here for the second half of the season. Marshall Holmes says, we all have to be realistic, though, and I think he means even to Quinn as well. What games do you see us winning the second half of the season? Let's take a look at that Falcons' remaining schedule here for a moment on AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. With New Orleans coming up this Sunday, admittedly in the Superdome, that seems like about as hard a game to win as you possibly can. At Carolina right now doesn't seem very easy either.
Tough game.
I mean, where do you see opportunities for competition for Atlanta left to come here?
I say Carolina at home, Tampa at home.
Yeah.
But in any of the home games, there's an opportunity. But Frisco, tough. Ooh, Jacksonville going to be tough because all these games are going to be tough to win. Every game in the NFL, and this, each and given every other weekend, Tampa's a team that can compete. Ain't no easy games. That's how it goes. But am I going to sit here and say the Falcons automatically lose because their record is 0-8? No.
Right.
They have a chance to beat every one of these teams, but will it happen? I don't know. But they're not exactly like their I think personally, any given weekend, their record is not indicative of some of the talent. They are who they are.
And some people are upset with me a moment ago for kind of talking about tanking, but let's say that what you just said actually played out. Let's say you beat Carolina at home, you beat Tampa at home, or let's say between those two and playing Jacksonville, which is a winnable game, although I think that Jacksonville's probably a better team than Atlanta right now, especially with Foles coming back.
Definitely.
Let's say you won 2 of those 3 games. If you go 3-13, you realize you're picking 9th, maybe. You're picking 8th. You're far removed from Chase Young. You're far removed from like a Derek Brown, which has been talked about in our YouTube comment section. What do those 2 wins really get you? Get you the 7th, the 8th, the 9th draft pick. Basically, just with your binoculars out, looking at the teams able to draft a Chase Young. You don't have any opportunity to trade back for one of these teams desperate for a quarterback. Boy, that'd be a lot of expense for 2 more wins. That'd be a lot of expense for 2 more wins.
And it could happen, but I don't think it's going to be at the expense of the players tanking.
Oh, yeah.
But you know what the thing is? When you get to that point, I think the real point is when you get to those last 3 games, that's when it kind of sets in. Not tanking, but, where could we draft at? Because at that point,
people might go to Cabo San Lucas at that point in time.
People going to Cabo San Lucas.
Yeah.
That's crazy, but I think no matter where the Falcons draft, even now if they win a couple games, they're going to get a top 10 pick, so they're going to get another starter. So, again, I hope they're able to win out, but right now they're going to get a high draft pick.
Travis Town says, we will win our divisions. That's the second Falcons fan today, feeling pretty confident about this. And I guess I will remind folks that you played on a team in 1997 that was, I may have the slight numbers off, but y'all were essentially 0-8 and 8-0, right? You went 0-8 to start, 8-0 to finish. It may not quite have been like that, but it's pretty close to a winless start and an undefeated finish.
Yeah.
I think
it was 0-7, then we won like 9, and next year we won. We had won a gang of games.
It's something like that. So if anybody knows what it's like to turn around the second half of the season, you played on a team that did that, and by the way, springboard to 14-2 the following year. And so, what does it take? You did it. What does it take?
Well, first thing it takes, you got to beat someone that's good.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And we came out and beat, I forgot who it was. Maybe it was the Saints, who were pretty good that year. But you got to come out and you really got to stick together. It's really the same cliche you hear from guys saying now. But I think the one thing that helped us, our defense got better. We all came together. We really started getting after the passer. That year, I think we were, 3rd in the league in sacks. But it was a young group of us defensively that kind of set the groundwork, and the offense kind of came along with us. But there's nothing worse than being 0-7, because I've been on the 0-18, whatever it was, 0-8.
Yeah.
And then I've been on a team that was like 0-5, and you're like, hey, yeah, we're gonna come back, and you keep losing. Man, it's just I don't think people. It's just like imagine being at your job,
right?
And you have no answers, and you think think the owner's about to fire you, your boss gonna fire you every second. Imagine going to work every day. Who's watching?
Tough.
Every day you go to work, your company right now is not productive. And every time you walk by your boss, you're thinking he could fire you.
That's tough.
Think about it,
That's
right
tough.
here.
Listen, you don't think I already think about that as it is right now. Somebody's going to come tap me on the shoulder and say, you're gone. I think it's pretty interesting to think about. It's a AJC Falcons News Now. It's sponsored by Miller Lite. Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. It tastes great. It's just 96 calories, and it's a great choice for you as you're getting ready to watch some Falcons football here this weekend. So we have been asked to talk more about the Raheem Morris situation, so let's do that. We'll reset for those who are just joining us and maybe have not been in on all the news this week, given the fact that Atlanta's coming out to bye. On Monday's show, when Big Bob Whitfield was sitting in for Chuck Smith, as we were doing the show, it was announced that Morris was leaving his duties as wide receivers coach and going back to the side of the ball that we probably think of Morris more closely associated with on the defensive side. He's now the defensive backs coach, and there's a little bit of shuffling that kind of makes some room. Bernie Parmalee kind of slides in to a coaching situation, and so Morris now back on the defense again. Chuck, what do you make of this? What do you make of kind of another example of I don't mean to like poison the well and make it sound super negative, but you're getting rid of Matt Bryant, now you're bringing Bryant back in. Now you're getting rid of Bryant again. It seems like there've been a lot of moments this year where Atlanta's had to say one of the decisions we thought we had made ends up not really being the right decision. Morris, a little bit of help for Dan Quinn on the defensive side. What do you make of all this?
Well, exactly what you just said.
Yeah.
I need a specialist. It says I needed help. I need someone that has proven that that's what they do, that they can help this secondary. And the one thing that was a little bit surprising, it was always surprising when they had Raheem as a wide receiver coach. Mm-hmm. But then I said, wow, is this kind of like an audition maybe? He's putting in work on the offensive side of the ball, to maybe become a head coach again. But I think that it's surprising because it's happening now, and it tells me already, I think he's mentioned that, he was always picking his brain. But to me, it's almost like a spark more from the defensive standpoint because now we got a specialist, so it gives us more. So now as a defensive back, oh, wow, we got better coaching, so it should put a little more energy and put a little more, make you better. So that, to me, that had a lot to do also with the defensive backs and Dan Quinn.
Randolph Jackson says, why was he never placed as the defensive coordinator once Marquand Manuel was let go going back to last season? And I guess there's something about this I've never quite understood. I mean, Falcons defense, the entire time Quinn's been here, statistically not been very good. Even the NFC Championship year, they were, bottom part of the league in almost all the important statistics defensively. But, there have been a couple defensive coordinator changes. Quinn wanted that job for himself this year. I don't know, is this a power thing? I mean, what is it about the fact that seemingly, and I guess if he was that good of a defensive coach, he'd be somebody's defensive coordinator already because he was only position coach on the offensive side of the ball for Atlanta. But it is something that comes up in our comments section a lot of, why didn't Quinn want more help on the defensive side of the ball? Why, you jettison Marquand Manuel and you want this, for yourself there. Obviously, Quinn had been, Super Bowl caliber defensive coordinator going back to his time at Seattle. It is one of those things that we haven't talked about a lot together, but it comes up in our comments section all the time about the way in which that Quinn has kind of manages defensive staff. And frankly, he's been a lot harder on some of those guys than the Falcons brass has been on him.
I know. Let me put it like this. So my wife, I got two boys. So my wife, at home, she does a lot, right? My wife takes care of the kids, takes care of me. So sometimes she'll say, okay, why don't you go and, iron the clothes or something like that. And if I take too long, what do you think she does? No, just go ahead. I'll do it. I got it. Let me go ahead.
That's my strategy. Around the house, I'm always trying to do things so poorly that I'm never asked to do them again. Taking out the trash, anything like that. It's like, let me just do this sort of mediocre quality, and they won't ask me to do it anymore.
So I want to break that down kind of not only for you, but for myself, but also for our viewers, whether you're a husband, you're a wife who does that. To me, it's a micromanager.
Yeah.
And to me, it's one of those things that it's a power thing that you can do it right, and you're not as much patient for what other people do. Mm-hmm. So Dan Quinn is just like I'm saying, not saying he's my wife, but Dan Quinn is saying, okay, well, you're not doing it the way I think it should be done, so why don't I just do it? You know what I'm saying? It's easier for me to do it because I know how I want to do it and when it should be done. So to me, it comes down to somewhat, not as a power like an ego, but a thing like, hey, I can do it better than you, so let me take way more responsibility.
Yeah.
Then what happens? My wife gets frustrated and she says, matter of fact, I need y'all to start doing this, and starts doing like Dan Quinn did and giving away some of the responsibility.
That's right.
And that's what I think he's going
Well, there's a weird thing, too, for Quinn, and I think this is just human nature. This is not a specific issue with him. It's just human nature, where when you have been the defensive coordinator, if it becomes out that you're relinquishing some of those responsibilities and the defense starts performing better, if that happens on Sunday, if Atlanta goes out and gets some turnovers, if Atlanta goes out and does something, nobody's going to be saying, wow, second half of the season, I guess Dan Quinn's found a spark. They're not going to do that. They're going to look at Raheem Morris and say, boy, moving Morris to defense must have sparked this. Whether that's right or wrong, that's the narrative that'll be discussed. And so if you're Quinn, it's almost like you don't have a lot of incentive to make a lot of coaching changes on defense to start shuffling responsibilities too much. Because if things go better, no one's going to give you credit for it anyway. They're going to give credit to the guys that you made the changes with. So if Atlanta goes out and plays a little bit better defensively, if there aren't these sort of like broken down, lost coverages, the kind of stuff we've seen in the past, no one's going to say, hey, good job, Dan Quinn. They're going to say, Raheem Morris should have been coaching on defense the whole time anyway. And that's just the way the media kind of works, maybe myself included. And that's the way this thing's going to be treated on Sunday if the Falcons defense plays better.
You're right, and give Dan Quinn credit. He could have stayed and said, you know what, I can do it on my own. But the way businesses are built and the way Dan Quinn, if this organization's is going to run, you got to deviate power out. You can't try to do it all.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest disappointments, and I'll say mistakes, and I think, I don't know if Q would admit it, but being a coordinator and a head coach, you can't do it. A defensive coordinator. Offensive coordinator is different because you're more on attack. There's so many reacting, so many different things you got to do on defense. I think it's really hard, but there's no way, in my opinion, you can be the head coach, the D coordinator, and take a responsibility for improving the defensive line and taking responsibility for the secondary. So Raheem, that move had to be made, and no matter what happens this weekend, win or lose, I commend him for trying, even though if the mistake was made earlier, you still got to try to do what's in the best interest of your team and your units.
By the way, Joseph Will on YouTube says, going back to your analogy, says, Chuck, that's how you lose your wife. now listen, I can attest here because I know Mrs. Smith a little bit. Chuck's taking care of business at home. The household is running very smoothly at 90 the Rhino Mansion.
But she'd be getting mad. Okay, I want you to do this. Take out the garbage. Next thing I know, I see she taking the garbage out.
Yeah.
Girl, let me do this. About 10 minutes later.
Y'all don't worry about Chuck's home life. He's doing just fine there in that regard. I can say that pretty well there. But as far as the Raheem Morris change, here's what Falcons coach Dan Quinn said about the move and what he's looking for Morris to provide, including this Sunday against the Saints. Here's Dan Quinn once again.
The number one thing, it's going to be communication first. The technique and the communication. The scheme part will, certainly feel similar. He's been part of that, and certainly he and I have talked a lot. But I would say the number one role is going to be technique and communications.
Interesting to hear him talking about communication there, because obviously you go back and watch the Seattle game. You talk about communication, the absence of communication. You just got guys running free. You got huge breakdowns in the red zone, and that is kind of a cool thing because obviously New Orleans is not going to throw 50 yards down the field, right? It's a lot of short passes. It's a lot of taking advantage of vulnerabilities. Drew Brees has never been one of these deep throw guys. It's a lot of stuff horizontal, and obviously that's how they like to use Michael Thomas. So you'll be able to notice, is this a better communication? Do they seem a little sharper? Do they seem a little bit more buttoned up? I don't expect to make a difference in winning or losing the game. I don't think Atlanta's winning on Sunday. But you'll be able to notice if that part of it looks better because, New Orleans is going to try to exploit that so much.
Yes, they are.
Pick plays, things like that.
Yeah, you're right. Pick plays, rub routes. The Falcons are going to have their personnel together. The number one thing I've said every week on here about disappointment, and it wasn't last week because Bob was here, but personnel. You got to be able to get lined up. You can't have 10 on the field. You got to get your personnel in. You got to understand how a substitution pattern. Those are the things that, number one, frazzle you as a defense.
Yeah.
So you get out there, you're looking like, oh, where's my other corner at? You're not lined up yet, and then you finally get set and realize that the personnel's not out there.
Yeah.
That's where the organization, really is important. And I don't think people understand enough. You got to have the right personnel so when New Orleans puts out 4 wides, the Falcons got to know, oh, we're going dime. Let's transition the field so we can get our guys out there. That's what I'm going to look for first and foremost this Sunday, personnel and how the substitution patterns work.
Michael Rodriguez says, I just hope we can end another team's undefeated streak. Did you see when Miami won last week as a Gatorade bucket? Would you be okay with Quinn getting a Gatorade bucket if Atlanta wins on Sunday?
No, because if that happens, the Saints still win. We got to pour a Gatorade bucket over Quinn's head just for getting the second win beating the Saints? No. But it's funny you say that. You kind of wrong for really saying that, man. Look,
they did it last week. Miami did it last week.
He's already tanked, man. He's tanking for us. Look, he's setting an agenda where they're gonna give us the consolation prize of a top 2 if we do some of the things that Brandon is saying.
A couple more things here too. Michael Will also brought this up on YouTube. This comes up a lot because people hear you breaking down the game about your coaching stuff. Obviously, you're doing a lot of coaching right now. It's not at the team level, but in terms of working with pass rushers and things like that, you are doing a lot of coaching. And I'm not quite so sure everybody in our audience realizes just how much personal coaching that you're doing. Would you mind talking about that for a minute? Because it seems like some people maybe aren't quite as aware of how many guys you're actually working with on a regular basis.
Right. So it usually starts in high school. When you look at what I do, it starts at a young age. So I'm start training guys then. So they'll go to college, they'll go to pros, and it's continuing development, it's continuing consulting, but I also consult college and NFL coaches. So this past week, I ended up going to 3 different teams. I went and visited their head coaches, and I would talk to their defensive coordinators. And what I do is I do a self-evaluation. I self-scout what they're already doing. So I'll go on there and break down the pass rushes. I'll talk about what schemes, what techniques work in those schemes, right? So also every day I get a report back from D coordinators, defensive line coaches, and about their players. So then I'll break down the player. I send what we call is a pass rush report. So every week I send out 75 pass rush reports to top guys all around the NFL.
Yeah.
Von Millers, the Aaron Donalds, a lot of those guys that I deal with. Max Crosby, like you saw last night from the Raiders. Bud Dupree from Pittsburgh. So that's one part of what I do. And in pre-draft, I have a rating system that NFL teams purchase. I created a system that NFL teams purchase called the VGHH Pass Rush System. The 4 vital keys of developing a pass rusher: vision, get off hands and hips. So I have a service where because I train and I evaluate these guys, I help them stack their board, right? So then I'm on the NFL Rules Committee. I've had opportunities to work with that and also with the development of the rules, right? So the tackling, all those things, I was invited by Troy Vincent and served on that. And actually caught a cab back with Dan Quinn about 2 years ago.
Is that right?
In New York. I was in there. DQ was on that Rules Committee that time. But so I do that. And so I'm really involved. Like right now, when I get done, I'll go home and I have to finish up breaking down pass rushers. I help my defensive guys break down tackles. So it's a lot more than just talking about it. I'm year round. I get a chance to get involved with teaching. I taught, and a lot of the coaches use my pass rush system. It's like this. This is the best way to say it. I'm an IT guy, right?
Yeah.
I created a system.
Yeah.
I created the system. I'm the IT guy that goes out and services it with my teams. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different layers, man. Pass rush, I'm kind of the first at what I do. So people really don't know what I do.
Is there a place people can go online and hear more about this or anything like that?
Yeah, they can go to chucksmithtraining.com, or you can follow me, Chuck Smith NFL, on Twitter, Chuck Smith Training Systems on Instagram, or just go to Twitter and put in hashtag Dr. Rush. You'll see me training.
That's a good nickname. I like that.
Yeah. So go to Twitter, Instagram, and it's a business, man. It's different. And let me just say this, Brandon. I teach a small skill. Yeah. It's less than 1% of the world of any jobs or even in the NFL, but it's a skill that's coveted because we're the guys who get after quarterback.
That's right.
And there's not many people. So if people follow me, I think I got somewhere around 20,000 followers, which is not a lot.
Right.
But 19,999 of them like pass rush. So if you like, so not many people truly understand it, but I'm here to, pass the word and do anything I can.
It's AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Miller Lite, the official beer of the Atlanta Falcons. We're running late. Let me do a couple things, though, if you don't mind, Chuck. This is kind of off the beaten path.
Okay.
Can I have just a couple seconds to, get some off my chest here for a moment?
Drop some knowledge.
There was something that was frustrating me this week. I want to show you this tweet from D. Orlando Ledbetter on Twitter. What's the problem with this picture? New Falcons kicker Younghoe Koo wearing number 7. What's the problem with that?
Mike Vick?
Yeah. You can't be giving 7 to a kicker. Listen, I'm not mad at Younghoe Koo. I'm not mad at him. I'm sure he'll do a great job. And, man, I needed a kicker. He's going to do that. You can't be giving 7 away. What are you doing? Now, I'm not an expert on this. I don't know who's worn 7. I honestly don't remember. Someone who's worn it in preseason. I really don't remember. I haven't. I'm not an expert on this.
Tony Graziani?
You can't be giving 7. You can't be giving 7. Listen, in sports, there are 2 different categories of memorable players. There are legends, there are icons. At the very least, Michael Vick is an iconic player in Falcons history. 2 playoff wins as quarterback. Everybody played with him on Madden for years and years and years and years. There's enough Vick jerseys to clothe the entire city, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, truly an iconic player. You can't be giving 7 to a kicker. First of all, what's a kicker doing wearing 7 anyway? But in this particular case, you can't give Vick's number to a kicker. You just can't do it.
I don't even think they're thinking that deeply.
I'm just telling you, they should be.
I understand, but maybe they should. But I don't think the Falcons, Arthur Blank and those guys, I don't think they have any thoughts about that. I don't think it was one thought, or really. Maybe it was, but maybe people would notice it this weekend and be interesting.
But you of all people, because I hear you talk about this on the show all the time, you respect history as much as anybody. Your own history, the history of the organization prior to you, the history of the organization after you. You've always been someone that I think of as pretty attuned to history. I mean, this is your history. Now, it's not all a perfect history. We all know the story of how it ended for him here. But as time goes on, Vic's on TV all the time talking, tried to be involved with that spring league, the one that had a team in Atlanta. Vic paid his price, right? He did his time. He's back in the good graces of the football community. And I think that there's a level of respect that his career ought to be shown here in Atlanta.
Well, I think it has a little bit to do when you think of the history. I think Mike Vick, he was drafted. Was Taylor Smith the coach? Was the owner, right? When Mike was drafted. I just think part of what the Falcons' history is, where they've missed the boat at, I don't think they have enough really respect or even truly put out enough effort to explain to our fans who really Mike Vick truly was. A lot of people don't know who he was.
Right.
So I think it really starts to me in '98 with us.
Yeah.
We brought in a whole generation of Falcon fans.
Yeah.
Then who comes next? Mike Vick.
Right.
So again, anything pre-Taylor Smith is not going to be treated as anything post Taylor Smith, and I'll just leave it at that.
And that's a good point. Along those lines, J.B. Brumfield also brings up on YouTube, same thing with Desmond Trufant wearing 21. You okay with Deion's number beyond Trufant's back?
Nah, it's true. Now, Prime, I would say this, though. Vic's a legend, and I think Vic should be in the Ring of Honor one day, but he shouldn't be wearing Prime. But you know what? You probably won't see 21 this week. He know he's going against Thomas and Kamara's back, so True might not be back this week. He'll probably be back next week.
Right.
He'll be back next week. True might not be back this week with Drew Brees and them. So you might not see 21, but he'll get healthy next week.
That game time decision. It sounds a lot better to play against Carolina. Solution Sports. One more comment. This says, I guess we're going to hear from Vic on the subject when he gets questioned about it. The truth will come out about it from his perspective. You know what? I think he's got every right to speak up on this, and I hope that he does. I just think. Look, it's not the most egregious error in the world, right? I think that Chuck's probably right. Ultimately, they probably didn't think that much about it one way or another. But the point is, there's just a way to do things, and that to me is not that way. Before we look at some scores, or I should say look at some games for the upcoming weekend, did you see that a guy that I talk about a lot, Chase Young, he's not going to play on Sunday? Letterman Rowe reported he's facing suspension. He's expected to miss the Maryland game. Young himself, that came back on Twitter and kind of explained that he took a loan from a family friend, paid it back, but while all of this is being kind of sifted through, he's going to sit out. Here's what I think, Chuck. For every team that drafts ahead of Atlanta, I think this should be viewed as a huge red flag. If you're drafting ahead of the Falcons, huge red flag. Obviously, I'm kidding because I think this shouldn't affect his as a football player whatsoever. Just interesting, the guy's already got 13.5 sacks. He's going to be the toast of the NFL draft, dealing with this kind of weird NFL thing. Or I should say this kind of weird eligibility thing. That's pretty strange, right?
It's real strange, especially since he knows he's going to be a millionaire coming up. But he just got caught.
Yeah.
Man, all these top dudes in America getting paid. They just didn't get caught.
Yeah.
So I'm going to keep it real with our viewers, and I know people want to think it's cookie cutter. Man, these dudes getting paid. They get paid to go to college. Not saying Chase, just I'm speaking about in general. Guys get paid to go to colleges. Guys get all kinds of things to go to colleges, and guess what? It gets even worse because guys get paid to go to the NFL, just don't get to know about it until something like this with Chase happens. It's happening.
So we'll see how that works out with him. Before we get a really cool piece of Falcons history on our desk here and talk about that, kind of a nice throwback to the Falcons and Saints, let me remind you of a couple of things. First of all, the AJC, proud partner of the Falcons, and we can celebrate that with you when you become an AJC subscriber. Go to this website, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. The website, once again, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. Choose one of the subscription options to get the best, most up-to-date, most in-depth Falcons coverage. When you do, this Falcons-branded cooler will be yours as a special thank you to that. So check out the website, subscribe.ajc.com/Falcons News Now. It is Week 10 around the National Football League. In addition to the Falcons and Saints, other games to pay attention to: Detroit and Chicago. Obviously, the Bears' offense is terrible. Baltimore at Cincinnati. That's a pretty ugly game right now. Cincinnati is. If you are really thinking about tanking, then Cincinnati is one of those teams you got to worry about because they are awful.
Yeah, they are.
Buffalo at Cleveland. Cleveland a bad loss last week. Looks like the Browns are kind of on borrowed time here, does it not?
Browns are. I don't like anything. That team is just. It's just not a good feeling for me.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. Odell Beckham Jr. You almost wonder if he, even adding him into the mix was a mistake. Jets, I think they actually could beat the Giants on Sunday, which obviously would be a huge help for Atlanta. Arizona at Tampa Bay, not even in my own backyard, but I watched that. Kansas City at Tennessee, I don't know about that. Miami and Indianapolis, obviously, not so much.
No.
Carolina and Green Bay is a pretty good game.
Right.
Rams and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's trying to show a little signs of life here.
They're heating up a little bit.
Minnesota Dallas, that's a good game. That's a good game.
Yeah.
And Seattle San Francisco is a good game. That's also the Monday night game, I believe. Really unusual to have a good Monday night game. That's probably the best Monday night game we'll have all season.
I like that. No, I like it. I'm liking both of those teams. San Francisco, whew, scary.
Yeah, really
scary
are.
Team.
So not a bad slate, all things being equal. Obviously, Falcons Saints highlights the day, though, for our audience. With that in mind, you're bringing back a piece of Falcons Saints history here.
And I'm not going to take too long. This game ball was given to me in 1997, just showing my age. It was in the New Orleans Superdome, and this game, I had 5 sacks.
Yeah, so you couldn't have started 0-8 in 1997 because that's a win in October.
Yeah. We won like 7 in a row at one point. We were pretty successful against the Saints, and I got 5 sacks in this game.
5 sacks?
Yep.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Adrian Claiborne broke the record, I think, 2 years ago. It was a record for the Falcons.
Who was the Saints quarterback then? Oh, that was Aaron Brooks.
They started out with Heath Shuler.
Oh, wow.
Then we finished Danny Werfel. He was the last guy that we fit. We had 12 sacks. We had 12 sacks that day.
A little Vol-on-Vol crime. You getting Shuler, a little Vol-on-Vol.
Yep, but the bigger point, it wasn't about
forgot Danny Werfel even played in the NFL.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
It wasn't about 5 sacks, though, and this wasn't about me. We had like 12 sacks that day.
Wow.
At the time, it was a Falcon record. 11 to 12 sacks. We had 12 sacks.
That's a season for Atlanta right now.
You ain't lying. And we absolutely tore them up. I went to Mother's after the game. We was talking trash to New Orleans.
Yeah.
And they could look, matter of fact, we not only kicked it there one on Sunday, they gave us Monday off. We stayed in New Orleans and shut it down on Bourbon Street. Yep.
Good for y'all.
We took over the Saints Club back in them days.
No, that's good to know right there. That's the kind of stuff you love to hear, and you only get that, the behind-the-scenes stories of some really fun times on AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Appreciate all of you being with us here today. Hope you enjoy the game on Sunday, the full weekend of NFL action. Don't forget, we're back here again on Monday, 1 p.m. for AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite, on Facebook and on YouTube. So share the show with your friends. If you're watching the game with some Falcons fans this weekend, tell them we're doing this. Chuck's always bringing fun talk and interesting information, really breaking it down. So we'd love to have you join us there for that. We'll see you back here then. Huge thanks to Miller Lite for making it all possible. AJC Falcons News Now, sponsored by Miller Lite. Have a great weekend, everybody.